Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2. Hey there, hi there, ho there. This is RHJunior coming to you live over the internet through the series of tubes to YouTube, imitating the boob tube, bringing you once again another broadcast of my little addition to the content of the internet, spleen squeezins. One dun 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 Hakuna Matata. Hey there, how y'all doing? Don't know if you hear me now. It's late. It's late. It's too late. Everything's too late. Everything's late. I'm late. You're late. The time of the day is late. It's 10 at night. It's 10 after 10. Guess what time it is again, kids? Okay, where'd I put that? Great. Now I lost my mind, lost my stylus. Here, just give me a second here. I'm just dig through. Here we go. No, that isn't it either. That's not the thing that I'm looking for. It's tragic. Mistook it for something useful. Okay, and let's see here. I want to talk a little bit about things. I want to talk a little bit about the future of gaming. Dun 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 dun. Like I know anything about it. And I want to talk about pop culture. And a little of this and a little of that. Okay, I also want to do some drawing. Try and get a comic strip up. I think that's my main problem. I've lost enthusiasm about everything. I really have. I've just lost enthusiasm. Don't ask me what the cure is. Let's see. Just opening the manga studio, which has now apparently changed its name to Clip. I wonder how much it costs to get an update to Clip. I wonder how much it would cost me to update my computer. More than I have. Way more than I have. Really need to keep the money away from myself. I just got a little donation in. My first thought was, can I get a pizza with this? Can I get a sandwich with this? That's not good. That's not good. I ended up ordering a chili dog for delivery. No self-control, my man. No self-control at all. But moving on. Okay, okay, I'm just trying to pull up some programming here. Okay. I'm going to switch it over to trying to bring it down here. It's not the window capture I want. It's not the window capture I want. It's the window capture I deserve. That's not it either. There we go. Alright. Draw a new page. Try and do a new page of Tales of the Questor. Just no enthusiasm left in me. I don't know why. I just wish I knew. 2 layers and 1 layer. Apparently, Blizzard, the people that produce World of Warcraft, along with several other games, they merged recently with Activision. And it's turning out to be rather toxic union. I believe it's apparently everybody is assuming that Activision is responsible for some of the profoundly stupid decisions that Blizzard has made fairly recently. You remember the big fiasco about Diablo, the latest release of Diablo. They came out at one of these big conventions. You know, they had the big release. All the, you have tons of people who are rabid fans of Diablo. And they were all just, chomping at the bit to hear the latest news about the new edition. It's supposed to be, Diablo 4 was supposed to be coming out. And they get there, and they are informed, guess what? Instead, we're going to be releasing something called Diablo Infinite, which is made for your cell phone. It's made for smartphone game players. And all the people in the audience, because I've been waiting for this for years. And then the announcer, they asked somebody in the audience says, are you ever going to release something for the for the console or desktop? And he said, we have no plans on those along those lines. Basically, they've decided that from now on, Diablo is going to be a cell phone game. And everybody in the audience was fit to be tied. I mean, the people were booing the guy. They were that mad about it. And he proceeded to stick his foot into his mouth so hard he was choking on his own kneecap. The first thing that came out of his mouth, what? You people don't have cell phones? And I can understand why these people were mad about this. Because think about it, just what a snotty thing to say. I would have been anything to be a fly on the wall. I would have been loved to have been able to put words in somebody's mouth there and have them say, no, we do not have a $300 or $400 cell phone. What we do have is a cutting-edge desktop gaming computer system, which we paid top dollar for just so that we could play the new game. What it is these game companies they see games like Candy Crush racking up millions of dollars for practically nothing, and greed jumped on their heads, and they go, oh, we got to get some of that. And so they are dumping everything that they know how to do, everything they have experience with, and they're going to try and break into the cell phone game, smartphone game market. They haven't got a clue what they're doing there. Sweet good night almighty. Can you think of anything stupider? I mean, this is almost as bad as what Disney did a few years back, about a decade or so ago. They announced that they were no longer making animated features. You know, the thing that made Disney. They were just, and all their stuff was going to be CGI. Oh, so you're just going to you just let Pixar do all your pictures? No, 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 no. Because Pixar had just left. We've got our own in-house animators to do that. And they released a couple of direct-to-video things, and just, substandard, just crappy stuff, and people were jumping ships like rats on the Titanic, man. They turned that decision around as quick as they could. They came out with animated features as quick. They came out with a classically animated feature real soon after that, and they begged and groveled and got Pixar to come back. We're talking new Coke kind of decisions here. But Activision and when you have one company buy that, it's obvious they're doing it for the money. They're not, they weren't with the company. They didn't start with the company. They don't have the vision of the founders of the company. They're doing it because they think they're going to make a fast buck. And Activision buying out Blizzard. Blizzard had its own problems. Blizzard had its own problems already. But Activision is, introducing to whole new brands of stupid. Because, apparently they've been firing people at Blizzard. 100 layoffs. 100 layoffs. That cannot be good. And hundreds more just quitting. It's usually what the company does. Corporate takeover. First thing they do is they come in and they insist that since you can do, that 4 people can do 4 hours, or, 4 people can do all the work in 4 hours, then 2 people should be able to do it in 2. I remember when I was working at Krispy Kreme, the donut shop. Our franchisees, they got bought out by corporate. And a couple of corporate guys came in. They were gonna fix things up and get everything ship shape. Those jackasses came in, and everything they touched turned to shit. I kid you not. And I do not hesitate to use that word. We had been working. We couldn't tell them nothing either. They come over there. They would fiddle with it. They one of the schmucks. He managed to. We had one manager, one assistant manager. She was a sweet girl, smart as whip, and hard worker. Kept people's morale up. She was great. She was a good manager. They literally reduced her to tears. Riding her rails about 10,000 stupid little things. God only knows what. What they did they hire new people? No, they didn't hire any new people. Did they give us, did they change our schedule? No, they didn't change it. They didn't give us any, they didn't give us any raises. They didn't hire any new people. What they did is they doubled our workload. In some places, tripled it. Because one of the things that the Krispy Kreme does is that Krispy Kreme, not just for the shop, they make donuts for all the stores in the area, and they ship it out by Krispy Kreme trucks. You've seen that's what they're for, and we were already understaffed. There was I worked third shift, and there was a 2-hour shift where I was technically breaking the law because I was the only one working there for at least a 2 or 3 hour stretch every night. But they had made me an assistant manager, in name only, basically, so they could get away with that, which was a crock. And this was when things were slow. And then they tripled our workload. They got more and more contracts. One of these two jackasses with briefcases. That's all it was. They came in. One guy started fiddling with all the settings on the fryer and the conveyor belt and the donut machinery, and knocked everything out of alignment. So you gotta understand, that machine had been there for decades. That thing had been running constantly, almost constantly, since the day it was plugged in. And the people that worked with it knew how to, knew its peculiarities and how it would, how hinky it could get, and how to get it to work right and how to get it run right. He messed up the glaze. He messed up the fryer. He messed up the, just an ass. Just sticking his big stupid fingers in everywhere he wanted to go. And this store was the Krispy Kreme, South Charleston, West Virginia. Yeah, you fat, bald retard. You know who you are. I'm from 100 miles out of town with a briefcase. I'm an expert. I don't care. I don't work for them. They got us, and top it off, they gave us so much more. They didn't give us any extra pay, and they didn't give us any extra workers. So they tripled our workload, and now we were already understaffed, and it got to where we couldn't keep the, one of the big jobs in Krispy Kreme is keeping the place clean. Keeping the place clean. And any food producing store, you got to keep the place clean. And you mop constantly. You scrub constantly. Everything has to be washed in scalding hot water. Most of the stuff we use, they had the 3-sink system that most restaurants are supposed to use. The hot soapy water, then the chemical dip, and then the rinse. And the thing of it is that half the things that we had to wash were too big to fit into the 3-partition sink. We had the 3-partition sink, we just couldn't use it. But we used boiling hot water, right out of, we used basically a garden hose with a high pressure sprayer to clean everything, just gleaming. Had to be. The fryers had to be clean, the frying fat had to be changed out, and the vents had to be cleaned, the drains and the floors had to be pulled up and cleaned. The floors had to be scrubbed, we had to be scrubbed, everything had to be scrubbed. And that's just to make a donut. You'd think we were about to give her, you'd think we were about to have somebody give birth in the place. But once they started that up, we didn't, we couldn't keep the place clean. We tried, we busted our tails, but there was just no way to do it. And some of us, myself included, we started getting infections, skin infections. I got at least 2 or 3 different cysts, infected cysts, just from being so hot, so sweaty, and being up to my elbows in mung all the time. You can imagine when I find, I got a job at a telemarketing place, and I quit that donut shop as fast as I got hired. Because, I didn't want to have to go to the doctor for another round of penicillin. What the real kicker was is that they screwed up my paperwork for my health insurance. Before before we went corporate, I had health insurance. And then they switched over. Oh, you need to sign these papers so that we can switch your health insurance. Oh, okay, I sign, hand it in. They lost the paperwork. I went from having coverage for medicine I had to buy to having to pay $100 for a bottle of antibiotics. Dear Krispy Kreme, dear owners of the Krispy Kreme in South Charleston, West Virginia, you suck. And you suck almost as hard as you blow. I'm in a nasty mood right now. Just don't ask me to be all loving and charitable and crap, because just thinking about that starts to set me off. If I can't focus enough to completely draw from end to end, I'll do some sketches and work on that. This is me jumping around. Jump around. Oh. But man alive, it's just unbelievable. But anyway, getting back to the games, like I was saying, they got taken over. They got mergered, which means is that they took they chased off all the good people, and all the stupid people that are left have merged together into one gargantuan mistake factory. And there's a lot of rumbling going around that this game's going to go, that World of Warcraft's going to go the way of WildStar. Of course, I'll say this much: World of Warcraft. Let's put it this way: every year around Christmas time, World of Warcraft gets a huge surge of people getting subscriptions, player subscriptions, and they lose about that much. About 2 or 3 months later, people get bored with it. They drop out. What they gain and lose as part of a fairly typical annual cycle, they gain and lose in this little holiday hump more than other games have as subscribers total. The next, the next most popular online role-playing game, that's that's how big the difference is. World of Warcraft can take, they've got a bankroll and a consumer base that can take quite a beating for quite a long time before it finally collapses. Barring any really incredibly stupid moves. But either way, one way or the other, really, the game can't continue the way it is. What do I mean by that? I've only been on about 26 minutes, Ben. In case you were wanting to know how long I've been online. I need a clock on here, so maybe a clock in the corner. I don't know. But the thing of it is that this game can't go on like this forever. The way it's been expanding, every couple of years they come out with a new expansion. Wrath of the Lich King, Cataclysm. First there was Warcraft Original, World of Warcraft Original. Then there was World of Warcraft Burning Crusade. Then there was World of Warcraft Wrath of the Lich King. Then there was World of Warcraft Cataclysm. Then there was World of Warcraft Mists of Pandaria. Then there was World of Warcraft Legion. No, Warlords of Draenor. Then there was Legion, and now we're at Battle for Azeroth. This is the current expansion. Now, the problem with this is that, okay, each new expansion isn't really an expansion. They change a few graphics and change a few mechanisms in the game. They upgrade the graphics a little bit, that kind of thing. But most of the changes, they tack on some new extra chapters at the end of the game. And each subsequent expansion has been, tacked on at the end of the previous one. You can see why this is a problem, because anybody creating a new character, suppose you've been playing on this game ever since it started. You've got one character, you've got one character and a dozen different alternative characters that you play, and each one, it takes, you have to start at the beginning areas. No matter how many expansions you buy, you have to start at the beginning areas and slowly grind your way up through all those previous levels, through all those previous expansions to get to the newest one. What they're ending up with is that a game where where everybody is only really interested in playing the content at the end. And the proportion of end content to boring, repetitive grind level grows with each expansion, because by the time Battle for Azeroth came out, I have one character. He's a hunter. And I started him out in Cataclysm. And I've been, each subsequently I've been getting him up to that level. But any new character I could create, any new race they introduce, with certain exceptions, you have to go back to the beginning. These new races that they've got, the Dark Iron Dwarves, and so on and so forth. You start out with one of those characters at level 20, But considering the max level is 120, let's put it this way. If you had an original character in World of Warcraft Vanilla, in the very first World of Warcraft, and you had a brand new character starting a level 20 character today is further from the maximum level content than a World of Warcrafter back in Cataclysm was from max level content then. Or rather at the beginning, it was like max level was something like 60 for the first vanilla World of Warcraft. I remember it was something like 80 by the time I first joined up in Cataclysm. But you start with a brand new character, and it takes you 100 levels, to get to the newest content. Think about that. They can't keep doing that. Eventually, you're going to have people that go, I am not going to go through 300 expansions just to play the 301st. What they need to do, they need to go back, they need to make an expansion that expands the game. They don't need to add new content, after level 120. They need to add new content all the way back down through all the levels. The starting areas, you buy the latest expansion, you should get new missions in the starting areas. There should be new options, new characters, and new mission threads. Just new content at every level, and there's no reason they can't do it. Scattered throughout the game is, if you're in the know, they don't erase old ideas. There is a ton of behind the curtains content. They didn't bother erasing it from the game. They just made it inaccessible. Art resources, entire zones, cities, artifacts that were going to be part of various zones and missions that they never completed. They never completed, and they just shut the gate and blanked it out, so nobody playing the game can find it, unless they clip through a wall at just the right place. Okay. Okay, checking PayPal. Come on, computer. Round and round and round you go. So that's what they need. You go in the starting area for humans in World of Warcraft, and there are all these NPCs wandering around. And it's obvious there's supposed to be a backstory to them, but there's nothing connecting to them. There's no mission, there's no enemies, there's no monsters, there's no, exclamation point saying, I have something I need you to do for me. They're just there. There's a lake, there's a river. You cross the river, and there's this area with a memorial stone standing in the middle of it, a big stone ring, a memorial stone in the middle of it, and these low-level wizards wandering around, rogue wizards wandering around. They're not doing anything. They're not part of any mission. They're not part of any cause. They'll shoot at you if they see you. So they're obviously bad guys, but there's nothing connected to them. There's a house full of brigands up in the hills. They're not doing anything. There's no way in. There's no way out unless you're flying. But there they are. They're just sitting there in a cabin, just staring at each other, waiting for some outside the game content seeker to stumble in on them, I suppose. There's another guy who's just a shepherd, a gnome shepherd, living in a little cabin up on a hill, up above the castle in Stormwind, just on the other side of a mountain. just him and his goats up on up, up on a cliff. No way, no way in, no way out. So and you can find all sorts of videos about hidden locations and stuff. Secret hidden rooms, that kind of thing. They got all sorts of potential for new content. Yes, it did go through. It did go through. That's good. Rock and roll. Just a minute, I'm just doing something here. Putting it out of my own reach, basically. Okay, great. Okay, anyway, they've got lots of resources, and, I mean, you go to the starting area where humans start out. It's a little chapel, and there's a vineyard, right across the stream where the orcs are causing trouble. The grapes were very tasty, rawr. If you play World of Warcraft, you know that reference. And they've got areas, things there that were obviously content previously, but were never used. Like there's a mine entrance, but it's barred. I can't think of anything more typically, start the newbie out than a mine full of kobolds. But they abandoned that and barred it off. Why? I don't know. But what I'm saying is, they need to, if World of Warcraft is going to survive, they're going to have to change the paradigm. World of Warcraft basically set the rules on how a game, a role-playing game, is designed online now. Two factions battling for whatever particular reason. One of them's obviously good, one of them's obviously evil, but we're going to pretend that they're both equally bad, anyways, just so the people playing the bad guys don't feel too bad about themselves. Stupid, but, they set the rules. World of Warcraft set the standard. And every expansion is going to put new content way on the end of the game instead of putting it throughout the game. And so on and so forth. Okay, so that's the first thing they need to do. They need to, when they make their next really big expansion, if they really want to survive, they're going to have to break their own paradigm. First off, by adding new content to all the levels, not just the last, not just the tail end. Make use of all those ideas that they put on. They've got an old junk file full of old ideas they could go back, review, reconsider, and add on. 2, they need to break this two factions race war thing. Okay? I thought we were supposed to be, we're all supposed to be evolved past that race is destiny thing. We fought a war against a guy with a bad toothbrush mustache over that. I think we should at least move with it. But, first of all, you should have as many races as possible to play. And second of all, you should at least have, several different factions. Not just 2, not even 3. Maybe 4, maybe 5. And no matter what race you play, no matter what class you play, regardless of what race you play, you should be able to choose whichever faction you want to join. It's already established in the lore that there were many heroic members of the Horde, and there were many villainous members of the Alliance. And even now that there are places you can go where you can find supposedly neutral third parties, and so on and so forth. So, make it official. Make it a part of the gameplay. Let the players choose, is what I'm saying. Instead of having it be, dictated by whatever race they choose. Now, I think there should be a limit to it. For instance, an undead necromancer should not be able to join the Paladins of the Light, so to speak. But every player should be able to pick at least. There should be a couple of factions that are closed off to them because of their background, their race, or their choice in class. But there should be at least 2 or 3 factions that they can join. And there you have it. You can make a lot more complex game without making it. Without cranking up the difficulty of programming or designing it. You could have neutral factions. You could have good factions, evil factions, neutral factions. You could have alliances between 2 or 3 different factions, so on and so forth. Whatever the latest expansion of the game required. It just gets me, okay, as it currently stands, World of Warcraft has 2 factions. The Alliance and the bad guys. And don't BS me, okay? The Horde was a bunch of demon-possessed orcs that invaded Azeroth, killed and ate killed, enslaved, and ate an entire continent's worth of people, and proceeded to turn everything they touched into a blasted wasteland, just like the world they abandoned. They got defeated. The few survivors were rounded up and basically made slaves for a while. Then they broke free and formed a new horde, which came back and proceeded to make the exact same mistakes all over again. And then, and every time you turn around, the Horde is always doing the bad things. No, just no. Right from the beginning, the Alliance are were not the aggressors, okay? It's basic morality 101, okay? The aggressor is the guilty party, okay? In any conflict, the one who instigated violence or force against another person is the one who is responsible. The defender is not to be regarded as the villain. Wild Wild Weasel, yeah, it doesn't necessarily make them good guys. It makes them the ones in the moral right in this particular question. We didn't ask whether they were the next coming of Jesus, okay? Yeah, it's in effect, you're going to have to accept the fact that people can why is this so hard a concept to grasp? I can grasp the idea that there are, good characters among the orcs and trolls and goblins and whatnot, but the fact remains that they have chosen the side of the aggressor. They have chosen the side of the invader. That makes their moral choice their moral responsibility. The Alliance, for all the things that the Alliance supposedly has done wrong, there's a lot of bad people in the Alliance too. I mean, in Colteris, there's this one, there's Lady Ashvane. Look up Lady Ashvane in the image files on Google. There's a woman you wouldn't want to lock dentures with. But and there are people in the Alliance that have turned to evil. But the Alliance is not the aggressor. They are the ones defending their homeworld. And by and large, they try to abide by a higher moral standard than the Horde does. Even on neutral territory, the first thing the Horde says, "Someday we will eat you." And just forget the Forsaken, okay? They're led by a lunatic. crazy evil woman. She's basically become everything she hated about the Lich King, and worse. The Lich King never tried to burn down the World Tree. They're the bad guys. Deal with it. Look, it's not a choice between hallowed saints and evil demons. There's the right and there's the wrong. The Alliance is on the right. They are in the right. There's no getting around it. The fact that there are bad people among look, it's just like Axis and allies, okay? People are dumb enough they see pictures of Axis soldiers petting kitties in the trenches and in the bunkers and say, "Oh, see, they weren't so bad after all." Yeah, but they were still marching on behalf of a Führer. Yeah, the Lich King, the guy who tried to. Actually, the Lich King, if you follow the lore, it turns out he was attacked and corrupt. Okay, it's kind of stupid. First of all, he did the one thing that when he purged that city, while he was still a paladin, the city had just been infested with the undead plague. Every single person in it was literally hours away from turning into an undead monster that would go rampaging across the countryside. It was an act of mercy. He hated doing it. Worse, it was instigated by the Legion. Again, it always tracks back to... It's always the Legion. You know, it always tracks back to the Legion, the demons, so on and so forth. Yeah, well, I've played the latest version of World of Warcraft. I know what they didn't tell you in the first three. You find out why Arthas went off the rails. I use that phrase a lot. You went off the rails. I need to come up with a new catchphrase. I think. Went bug nuts. That'll do. But he was forced to do something horrible to spare the rest of Lordaeron from a plague that would have wiped it out. Backed in a heads I win, tails you lose situation by a demon lord. And he became obsessed with tracking this demon down and defeating it and gaining vengeance for the people of the city he had to purge. He never noticed as he inched further along the trail. In the end, he became a slave of the demons. The undead... The undead, what do they call it? The plague, the blight, the word not coming out of brain. Well, anyway, the undead, basically, for all the Lich King's pretensions, he was a puppet of the Burning Legion. It always goes back to the Burning Legion. Look, like I said, it's like Axis and allies. The fact that there were bad things going on in the Allied nations. I mean, America, we still had racial segregation, problems with gender role, women's rights and minority rights and all these other things. But when it came down to it, when it came down to a choice between the world of America, where, yeah, we're flawed, but we have high principles, we don't always live up to them, but we're trying, versus the Führer, who was plunging the world into a man-made hell. The choice between right and wrong, the choice between the good guys and the bad guys is crystal clear. Modern generations have had their skulls stuffed full of mush with moral relativism. They're so fucked up. Pardon my language. They're so effed up. I've had teachers tell me they've had kids come up, after a lesson on the Incas and Aztecs about, the Aztecs. They took slaves. They committed human sacrifice, and in horrible ways, horrifying deaths, and skinning people alive, ripping their hearts out of their chests, just to make this, just to please the rain god for another year. And this teacher, he said he didn't, and he had students, young little bubbleheads come up to him and say, well, you really shouldn't judge them because it was from a different standard in a different time, and they had different morals and ethics than we did, and it's that. The only people that you seem to have any judgment against are the people who actually value right over wrong. This is my problem with your moral subjectivity. It ends whenever it comes to people who try to maintain a higher moral standard. They could be Satan themselves, and you'd be out there apologizing, well, they really mean well. You really need to have sympathy for them. Let's give them a cookie. But when it comes to people who are trying to live right in the eyes of man and God, and doing their best, not always succeeding and not always living up to the standards they set for themselves, but they're still on the side of the light, you dump all over them. How dare you? What it is, you just don't like the fact that somebody else will hold themselves to a higher standard, and you feel guilty about it, and you don't like the idea that other people, somebody might hold you to a high standard. I'm sorry, that's just torque me. That is just, you couldn't torque me off faster if you grabbed me by the nuts and twisted. No, Weasel? No, it's yeah. Captain Crazy Pants, the wizard who was supposed to be protecting all of who was supposed to be protecting all of Azeroth. Yeah, he opened up a gate and let the Horde through. But again, he was being possessed by, again, a demon from the Legion. The Legion, the Horde invaded, slaughtered, killed, got defeated, got their asses kicked, ended up in chains for a while. That's what you call consequences of your actions. That's often how God punishes people. He lets them fall into the hands of people who are just asshole enough to make him miserable. And every time you turn around, every time you look at the game, every time you turn around, the Horde is backstabbing the Alliance, even when they have an agreement where the fate of the world hangs on the Horde and the Alliance uniting, even for a time. Legion, it starts out with Sylvanas, pulling up and ducking out just when she was needed, when the Horde forces were needed the most to stop the Legion invasion. You're mistaking your sympathy for a handful of color feature characters. What I mean by characters are added to give sort of flavor and color to the lore. You're mistaking your sympathy for their past or their own struggles and trials for a moral comprehension of what their entire organization did. Again, stormtroopers petting kitties. Don't fall for that. What's really sad is that there are races that have joined the Horde that you're asking yourself, why the heck did they join in the first place? Okay, now the orcs and the trolls and the goblins, You know, it just okay. They couldn't be. You know, those guys are practically a parody characters from Captain Planet. Come on. You know, they you know, just, you know, what's the term? What's the term they use? What's the term they use? Flamboyant spenders, something consumers, something like that. They're polluters. They're robber barons. They're polluters. They're exploiters. They're what's the word? Exploitative? No. Conspicuous consumers. That's it. You always got to remember the alliteration. They always go for alliteration if you can't remember. Conspicuous consumers. The caricatures of everything. Young children are taught to hate about. Western civilization, especially Americans. Even the New York accent. So you got this race of orcs. Depending upon which timeline you follow, either they've, whether you're talking the regular horde, which are a bunch of schmucks who enslaved themselves to demons for power, and then proceeded to eat their way through two worlds, or the Iron Horde, which didn't and still turned out to be a-holes. Isn't that interesting? They didn't enslave themselves to demons, and they still start a war of conquest. My, oh my, isn't that interesting? It's almost as if they were the bad guys. I can see the trolls and the orcs and the goblins getting along fairly okay. And maybe the trolls. I tried playing a couple. I got through the introductory areas for the trolls, the goblins. The goblins are hilarious. I'll admit that they're absolutely freaking hilarious. Just laugh your pants off, funny. Just morbid sense of humor. And I've done the introductory areas for the orcs, the trolls, the goblins. Even did the death, the Forsaken. Is there any race that I haven't done yet? The Tauren, yeah, I did the Tauren too. But I'm like, why the hell did the Tauren sign up with these? I mean, here, can you imagine that you're a Tauren? You're sitting there smoking your peace pipe, and you're sitting in your totem, and you're smoking your peace pipe next to your totem pole, just in your wigwam, just looking out over your valley of oneness with Mother Nature and Mother Earth, and up comes an orc and a goblin. You got on the left hand you've got Captain McKill Crazy Warmonger, and you've got on the other you got a little shrunken green version of Baron Loot and Plunder. And you say, would you like to join the horde? My friend here will turn the place into a blasted warland. Me, I'll just pollute the crap out of everything. Why, yes, that would be grand. The Earth Mother is pleased. I'm like, what the what? It gets even worse after Legion, because there's another tribe of Tauren that show up. Another tribe of Tauren that show up. Both sides are, in Legion are supposed to be trying to woo them to join either the Alliance or the Horde. They're the Moose people, the High Mountain Tauren. Why didn't they just make them Moose people? Why did they have to be Tauren? I don't know. And you go through all these missions where as an Alliance member you save their people from monsters. and from slavers and from giant cannibal bug things, and you help them recover a lost artifact from their lore, and you do all this for them, and they join the Horde. You come back and battle for Azeroth, and there, and there's old Moose Antlers standing right next to Commander Crazy McKillpants, and right behind Baron Loot and Plunder. It's like, I'm still not sure why the trolls joined. They're all like the Jamaicans, man. Yeah, they played up the Jamaican angle really hard in the starting area for the trolls. Come on, he's groovy, man. Aren't they? And they're raising the Velociraptors. Aren't they cute little fellows? And you go through this whole arc where you and your best friend are going through all this training for your tribe, and very dramatic scene. You lose your best friend battling some evil sea witch. But and then Garrosh Hellscream, name to run from really fast. Hellscream, okay? Sends in a magical message and says, "We're going to war, 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 monger, war." And your troll chieftain is like, "Well, I don't like this war, but I'll join up anyway." And you're sitting there going, "Why? What do we get out of it? Shot in the face by hit in the face with an Alliance Warhammer? No, oh yeah, that's great incentive." Everybody, the social activist types like to complain that all the women in World of Warcraft are designed to appeal to, no matter how the males look, the females are designed to look, hubba hubba. Designed to appeal to young male audiences. Imagine that. But man, you should have seen the preliminary art for the troll females. Picture the male trolls the way they are now. Picture the male trolls the way they are now, but with sagging pendulous boobs. I'm serious. They played a short clip of the original animation. I'm sitting there, and and this troll with boobs and wide hips sort of lurches onto the screen. She's wearing like a fur bra and bikini, and I'm sitting there. My eyes are burning. Yep. Yeah, bull. Look, there are thousands of females who play the game. Do you think they want to play an ugly chick? Yes, I do play World of Warcraft. I play World of Warcraft. My question is, why, this was in, let's see, was it Cataclysm? But it was one of the transitional ones where they had just been in an alliance with the alliance, and here comes Garrosh Hellscream, screw this peace stuff, and their the druid, the shaman leader, the war chieftain, what's his name? It's on the tip of my tongue. The druid had to go. It was Cataclysm. The druid chief, the chieftain of the orcs and the war chieftain of the horde, had to go. Thrall had to go off with a bunch of other druids to try and keep the world from exploding again, and left Garrosh Hellscream in charge. No matter how much you may particularly like Thrall, I swear that boy just got no common sense when picking the help. And the instant Thrall was out of sight, Garrosh Hellscream was like, "Oh, time for another war." And the Troll Chieftain's like, "What are you doing, man? This is a bad idea. We gotta do it." Okay, okay. I'm the new troll. I'm the new troll acolyte, and I'm saying, what kind of leaders do we have here? Yeah, I used to actually. I used to have the original Warcraft. Warcraft. The world. The original one, number one. Right, right. Back to work. Fine, do. That was years. Been years. I think I got the CD floating around here somewhere. Bought it in a bargain bin, I think. Years and years ago. It been a long time. I'm talking old school, really. Really old school. Oh well, in Cataclysm, basically, if you've played World of Warcraft, you know what Cataclysm is. It's basically the leader of the Black Dragonflight basically went bug nuts and proceeded to tear the world a new one. Earthquakes, volcanoes, made a mess of the capital city of Stormwind. Took them months before they finally cleaned up the artwork. I mean, it was kind of silly for the first for months after after Cataclysm had started. You could see the two towers in the front of Stormwind were just smashed, where the dragon's claws had been, and they were still glowing hot. Oh, they went back. They tried to make the orcs more sympathetic, and ended up, you know, jamming their own heads up their rear ends when it came that way. Look, I've got no problem if you want to play a bad guy, but if you want to play the villain, if you want to play a villainous character, at least own up to it. Reach out, find your lug nuts, and admit, yeah, I'm playing the bad guy. How long do you think Civil War? How long do you think the average World War II reenactor would last if he came in?
I don't really think that Hitler really did anything wrong. In the truth, the alliance with the aggressors.
Oh yeah, guess how far that would fly. Fess up, okay? Anyways, point being is for several of the races, it makes no sense that they're working together. The Tauren should have taken one look at the Horde and what the Horde does to the mother, to the Earth Mother, and said, "Bleep this shit, I'm out. Bleep this shit, I'm out," and either gone off their own direction, which really would have made more sense, or gone and joined the Alliance. But game balance. So that we want a new race for this side and one new for this side, and we can't screw this making sense crap. And then the Pandarians. Okay, I love the Pandarians. Let me get this straight. I love the Pandarians. Okay, I love the Pandarans. Are they Pandarians or Pandarans? Either way, I love the Pandarans. Okay? Hey, cool. I loved Pandaria. I love Pandaria. It's beautiful, exotic. I like Oriental stuff. First of all, and second of all, is a fabulous twist on things. And yes, they were part of the lore way back when. They occasionally you'd see a Pandaren NPC, so they were out there. They were out there long before Kung Fu Panda, so don't start with that. Now, well, the thing of it is that they did something. Oh, I think this is a great idea. The players get to choose whether they join the Horde or the Alliance. The problem is that no matter what happens, even though it's Garrosh Hellscream who utterly buggers up their country, the NPCs are programmed to blame both sides equally. You have brought war to our country. You have brought war to our land. You are savage. Yeah. And meanwhile, and you're looking at all the martial arts weapons. I guess these are for dicing potatoes. In fact, one of the cut scenes, the final scenes I've been informed, I haven't seen this one because I don't play Horde. But you're at the starting area for the Pandarans. You're on the big giant floating turtle island, and you choose either Alliance or Horde. And the two protagonists who are going along with you, the male panda, who is obviously crushing hard on the other one, the female, chooses the Horde. Well, the female chooses the Alliance. And and you go off with if you go off with the Alliance, it's really sad because you go to meet the king. You go to meet King Varian Rin, and he actually takes you aside and and informs you and your Pandaren friends. You're in Alliance now. We're at war. You are going to find yourself facing. You may find yourself fighting neighbors, friends, even people that you loved. But we have no choice in that, and we can't accept anything that says you are Alliance now. And the panda girl gets this devastated look on her face as she realizes she has been declared. She's basically declared herself an enemy of her old classmate. Who there's a little something going on there. They're both crushing on each other, and neither one wants to admit it. And anyway, near the end, after Garrosh Hellscream has shown them the Horde way of doing things and turned the Veil of Eternal Blossoms into a huge infested blight covered in shrieking, screaming Shah, the Horde takes... there's a cutscene where the Horde takes the male Pandaren who went off to join them, and they are torturing him because they for some reason they believe he's betrayed them. And only in the cutscene if you have to play through because in order for the girl panda to arrive on the scene, rescue him in the nick of time. Miss Pandaria, it basically ends with her going on to continue helping the Alliance, but he goes home, shaken by what he's seen, and goes back to the Turtle Island and becomes a tutor, teaching Panda Kung Fu. But that's the sad thing is people were that's one of the things that honked people off about the Pandaria expansion, because no matter there was nothing you could do. Okay, there was nothing you could do either as a Horde player or an Alliance player. There was no choice you could make. There was no divergent path that you could take that would prevent what eventually happens at the end game. With the Veil of Eternal Blossoms being destroyed. And you're supposed to accept this lambasting about how you've brought evil to their land. You know, it sort of leaves a bad taste in your mouth. You know what I'm saying? Well, right, you know, you think I'm sorry. The that takes on the part of the Pandarans, that takes example of willful blind. The first mission you have as an alliance agent is to rescue kidnapped Pandaran children from the horde warlocks. I'd love to know what the horde side, you know, what explanation. Oh, we were just babysitting them for a while. You know, what are they coming up with? But and yet the entire time they try and make it like the poor Pandarans are just trapped between two extremes and they don't know which way to go. Bull. And in fact, you go through Pandaria. It's like you have brought war to a land, and then you go through Pandaria, and there is war everywhere. The Pandara are fighting the Hosen. The Hosen are fighting the fish people. The buffalo people are fighting the bull people, and the insect people are trying to invade over the giant wall that the Pandarans built. And then you have the Mogu, who are basically trying to come out of retirement and reconquer the entire continent. Oh yeah, yours is a land of peace and harmony. I've gotten way off track of that. It just I run for that for miles. What I'm saying is that there should be at least, there shouldn't be just two factions. There's too many different people pulling different directions. The Tauren, well, for instance, the races like the Tauren and the Pandaren and the Night Elves, all the harmony, nature, Mother Earth, tree huggy types. Should be pulling in an entirely different direction from everybody else, because they can, you got to figure they can't, the night elves, and the druid types just can't be too happy with the way the gnomes and the goblins sort of wreak havoc on the landscape. The gnomes are, the goblins are worse than the gnomes. The gnomes aren't in the habit of deliberately leaving huge puddles of oil and toxic waste everywhere. It just seems to happen by accident. And the what the Forsaken do, covering the land with poisonous blight. Bleep this, bleep I'm out. Bleep this crap I'm out. And out the Tauren go, man. And that's what gets me is that eventually they're playing. It's looking pretty solid that the next races they're going to introduce are a sort of cyborg race of tinker gnomes that are half robot. Those are going to be the alliance. Yeah, what we need, more gnomes. Yay! Terrific, fantastic, fabulous. Yeah. And they're going to introduce the Volparans, and the Volparans are going to join the Horde. Now the Volparans are slaves, and they are slaves to a race of snake people who not only use them as slaves but as food. And so of course they're going to join the race that they're going to join the Horde, where some of the races will enslave you and others will eat you. I'm sorry, if I was a Volparan and I took one look at the menu, the past and the history of the trolls and the orcs, and especially one look at a Forsaken, I'd be like, screw you guys, I'm going with your lives. Bye. No, you don't get that choice. You want to play looks like you go and play you want to play a cute little Volparan fox person? You're going to have to pay hard. And basically participate in the very atrocities your people are trying to escape. And considering all the time that the Forsaken, the undead that have the Forsaken, the Horde has backstabbed the Alliance dozens of times, but the Forsaken have backstabbed the Horde. The Horde, nobody should want anything to do with them. But here they are. This is why they say, great. This is why I'm saying 4 or 5 different factions. You got, I say the human, there would be a faction over here for the humans. The progressive. You consider them the builders, the builders faction. That would be the the humans, the gnomes, the dwarves, because they're very young, eager, energetic races that are big on building things, blacksmithing and engineering and all this other crap. They should, that should be at least one faction right there. Of races that are trying to, build. They're trying to get a start, trying to build up their civilization, literally from rocks in some cases. And then you should have the tree huggy types, like the Tauren and the night elves. And and over on one side the orcs and the goblins, maybe the trolls, and over here should be league of evil a-holes, where you have your Forsaken, and so on and so forth. You get my point. You get my point. The Worgen, as they were initially, they're initially human. Well, that's why I'm saying every character, depending upon what race they whatever race they choose, depending upon the race they choose, and whatever class they choose. I would have to draw a chart and diagram to figure it all out, but there should be at least, there should be about 5 or 6 factions, and every player, regardless, should be able to choose 2 or 3 that they can join, depending upon certain factors like what race they are, what class they are. So, okay, you got the night elves, you got the dark elves, you got the void elves, you got the elves. You could start a faction of pointy-eared, arrogant people. One of the things about World of Warcraft is that humans can choose just about any class they want. While other races can only choose a few. It would be more a question of which factions are you permitted to join. I'm saying, this is, if you're going to go to the next paradigm level, if you're going to shift the paradigm about games, they're going to have to do some very original thinking. They're going to have to do something. They're going to have to do things differently than they have ever done them before. This is why so many of these online role-playing games fail, is because they are basically trying to just repackage what somebody else already did. They make a few changes, but in some fundamental regard, they stick to the old formula. And unfortunately, the old formula is dominated by one game and one game only, World of Warcraft. That's like trying to compete with McDonald's by imitating the special sauce. Now, even if McDonald's is terrible, it's so huge and has so much inertia, you're never going to run them out of business. Now, where was I? Yeah, they're going to have to do things very differently. They're going to have to, eventually they're going to have to change gears and radically change the game, the name of the game. And is that you should be able to choose any race and any class you want. And you should have more than one option as to which faction you join. I mean, each faction should have different. Each faction should have different values that they hold to, different philosophies, and different allies. Some of the factions will be allied together. Some of the factions will be neutral to each other. Some will be hostile. And and obviously each faction has its own settlements, its own cities, and depending upon what your placement is as to whether you can walk in peaceably, whether you have to walk in and just watch yourself like you're at the Mos Eisley Airport, spaceport, and others where if you're going to run into the city, you're going to be running back out. Variety, in other words. And it makes it possible that you decide, later on you decide that all the factions go to war with each other. Hey, and an expansion after that, you decide that this group is at peace with somebody they were at war with before. Hey, there you go. But just saying. Now, another thing they're going to have to work on. The crafting skills. I've only played a couple of online role-playing games, Morpurgers, and they seem to have it, but World of Warcraft has it really bad. You have an entire system that they have created. Professions. They call it professions, but it's crafting. You can have two professions. One. You can have two professions. There's like 7 or 8 different crafting skills, and about 3 gathering skills. You have 3 skills for gathering: mining, herbalism, and skinning. Where basically you skin the animals you kill. And it causes a problem. Yet you can only have 2 professions. So usually people pick 1 crafting skill and 1 gathering skill. If you pick herbalism, you can pick either potioneering, which alchemy, or you can pick inscription, which uses the plants to make ink. For different enchanted papers, that kind of thing. If you pick mining, you can do, you can go with blacksmithing, which makes armor and weapons, or engineering, which makes all sorts of cool gadgets. It sort of puts a really hard limit, though, on what you can do, because it makes it a little harder to design. Suppose you wanted to make a wizard. When I first tried to make a wizard character, I gave him the skill of enchanting, the profession of enchanting, and also the profession of inscription. Because I wanted him to be the ultimate magician who could do all sorts of magical things. He could make magical he could make magical enchantments on scrolls. He could make but that meant he couldn't do any potions. He couldn't do any potions. He couldn't gather any herbs. He couldn't gather the ingredients he needed. That's the thing of it. Enchanting is a sort of a one-off. because you can use enchanting. Some of the loot you gather can be, if you're an enchanter, you can disenchant it and break it down into magical ingredients. Meanwhile, you have tailoring, which you can make magical robes and gloves and hats and things that wizards aren't allowed to wear leather or metal armor, so they have to wear cloth armor. Thing of it is, the only way you can get cloth to work with is by killing characters and scavenging cloth off their dead corpse. Makes that cute little dressmaker in Stormwind a whole different story, doesn't it? Anyway, so it's imbalanced. He's got two problems basically. One, by the it's an entirely separate thing. It's the stuff you make in the game. Technically, it's useful in the game, but the problem is, by the time you're able to make a level 10, suppose you're a blacksmith. By the time you're able to make a level 10 breastplate, or shield, or helmet, you're already leveled too high where it's practically useless to you. You can give it to lower ranked players, or you can sell it on the auction house. But it's a very poor yield. Most of the stuff is of minimal use to you, and only for a few short levels. Most of the people that grind, I'm doing this myself. I find myself doing this myself. Most of the people that make get into the crafting skills, they grind them for the sake of grinding. Just to say, all they get out of it is the bragging rights. I can do all these recipes, and none of them are useful to you. You have like 15 different levels of healing potions, which wouldn't even cure a stubbed toe at your level. You can make armor that might as well be tinfoil on the level that you're playing at this point. Whoop-de-doo. And what's more, the stuff you do in your professions are useless even for doing your professions. Now, there are some recipes you get, like there are some recipes for example, in engineering. You learn to, in early levels, every now and then you'll learn to make a component, like a handful of bolts, or a certain type of spring, or so, and then later you'll learn to use those ingredients to bring them together and make something else. But that's few and far between. Most of the time, let's put it this way: I'm in Battle for Azeroth. I'm in the expansion battle. I've reached the level of Battle for Azeroth. At that level, the only recipes that are any use to me are the ones I get in the Battle for Azeroth expansion. Everything else that my character has learned to do is useless. He can smelt copper, bronze, steel, silver, gold, titanium, mithril. He can pound all those. He can fell iron and a dozen different other alloys and metals. He can pound them into dozens of different kinds of armor, all the way from vanilla World of Warcraft all the way up to Warlords of Draenor. But once he's learned them, they're of no use to him anymore. Not even for leveling his, after a certain point, you can spend all, at first you get leveling points for hammering out copper chainmail. But after a certain point, you start getting fewer. The name of the name of the recipe goes from bright red to yellow to green to gray, and then you stop getting points. You can make copper chainmail till doomsday, and you'll never get another point for it. And you can't use what you make at low levels 99 times out of 100. You can't use what you make at low levels to make more stuff at high levels. Engineering is one of the few exceptions to that, but only for certain recipes. For instance, the each this is interesting. This is one thing they've done is that each profession, crafting profession, you eventually reach a point where you can craft certain types of weapons as certain types of vehicles or steeds, mounts, whatever you want to call them. Tailors eventually learn how to make a flying carpet. Problem is, only they can use the flying carpet. Engineers eventually learn how to make a gyrocopter. And you have to be an engineer to fly the gyrocopter. Jewel crafters learn how to make a panther, a jeweled panther. It's basically an animated statue out of jade of a panther that you can ride into battle. But that's, you're the only one who can ride it. Are you starting to see my point that the profession skill is fairly poorly integrated into the game. They need to go back. They need to make more of the recipe, more of the stuff that you make more potent, so that it is, useful to you for a longer time. And for more levels. The healing potions shouldn't, for instance, the healing potions, right now they heal you for a certain number of hit points, which is great when you only have 100 hit points, but when you hit you have like 10,000 hit points, a potion that heals you for 10 hit points isn't such a hot deal anymore. They need to make them so that they heal you for a certain percentage of your hit points. Minimal one would heal you for like 1%, and next rank would heal you for like 10%, that kind of thing. Just saying. That would be much more. Basically, they need to they need to up the levels on the crafted materials, so that they are still useful to your character after he's learned how to use them and make them. Second, they need to make it so that the low-level recipes, all those low-level recipes that you learn, are still useful at higher levels. Take some of the newer recipes, bring out new recipes where low-level recipes are for the ingredients that for some of the ingredients that go into the high-level recipe. Like, you make a level 1 potion, you got a level 1 potion, but then you're up to level 100 and you try to make a high level 1 potion, and it takes this ingredient, dog of hair of rat, dog, fur of cat, and a level 1 healing potion. Or you make a high level crafted engineering device. You have to use several components you make at lower levels. Engineering is one of the few that even comes close to doing that. They also ought to loosen up on who can use what steeds. Seriously. I have a character. I'm for those of you who are reading the Warcrafter, I do have a character in World of Warcraft called Bayleaf. in the story, he has engineering and enchanting. Right now in the game, he has engineering and mining. Because until I max out his, it's too expensive to buy the ore he needs to craft his devices. It's better that he has a pickaxe and can dig up some of his own whenever he stumbles across it. Personally, they had these little minor skills like that really should just be bundled together. I'm sorry, digging for rocks, picking plants, and ripping the skin off an animal should be, medieval fantasy world 101. That should be stuff that anybody can do. They ought to make it so that everybody gets the basic gathering skills, and that they can level them up depending on what it is that each of those skills can be leveled up, but that's up to the player what he levels up. I'm just saying. Yeah. Can you finish your MLP stories on Archive of Our Own? I'm actually working on a chapter right now for the next chapter of the Great Alicorn Hunt. Thumping it out. I managed to get a couple of pages done. It will get out there eventually. It just takes time. It will. Well, the thing of it is that the way they do armor, magic casters can only use cloth armor. Mid-range hunters and druids, don't ask me why, wear leather armor, as do rogues. And once they get up to a high enough level, they can wear chain armor. Only the fighters and the paladins and death knights. I believe the demon hunters wear plate as well, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check. Man, I wouldn't want to. I had a demon hunter character for a very brief while. I made it all the way through the training area anyway, and I was just yeah. I mean, playing Legion. I mean, I would not want to be hanging out with Illidari Stormrage at all. You completed every time you completed a mission that he would you'd get a little comment box and you'd say yes, make them suffer and crap like that, and you're like yeah. I can't think of anything dumber than this. No, it's injecting yourself full of demon juice to try and make yourself powerful enough to fight demons. No, stupid. Considering that drinking demon blood was how the Horde got enslaved to the Burning Legion in the first place. Whoa, can't wait to go for that. Boy, where do I sign up to lose my free will to the forces of evil? Sounds like a great deal. Yeah, well, the demon hunters are ridiculously overpowered. They're the Blizzard game designers, grim dork, lovey-doll right now. They got super speed. They're strong. They're fast. They got super speed attacks. They can fly, and they can shoot death beams out of their eyes. Demon Hunter, my ass. That's Super Satan. Okay. Up and away. It'd be nice if we actually had more people working for Blizzard who weren't suckling up to the evil is cool crowd. Precisely. Precisely. This is my point, Wild Weezy. Yeah, the problem is that when you play an undead character, you're still stuck. I love how it starts out. You have we brought you back from the dead. You have your free will. You can go your own way, and the only way you can go is to continue working for Queen Crazy Pants. Personally, I think that a person's choice in class should matter more as to which faction they join than what race they're in, what race they belong to. I can't think of anything stupider than going to war with a world full of demons and deciding, oh yeah, oh yeah, let's have these guys that drink demons' blood to give themselves demonic powers join in. Oh yeah, and we'll make we'll let these warlocks over here, these guys that get their powers by summoning demons, join us in our fight against the demonic hordes. Yes, that can't possibly go wrong. This can only go well. Now I used to play Dungeons and Dragons online. With two different campaigns under the same dungeon master, both set in the town of Jarlsheim, the city of Jarlsheim, which we found out was an island. About halfway into the campaign, he tells us, "Oh, by the way, this is an island. You can't do that." I'm like, "What?" But anyway, in one campaign, we were joyous roguery. We were, regardless of what, we also got all the all the rogue skills. I just decided to play a straight rogue because I didn't want to mess around with the dual leveling and all that. I was still shaky on the whole rules thing. But anyway, we were a band of thieves working out of a tavern, and we would do all sorts of bizarre things. Just absolutely, my character was a gnome, a gnomish rogue known as Honest McGillicuddy. And I wanted to originally play him as the easygoing, charming Irishman, and friendly, and I was trying to play him but that didn't last very long. I think he became an outlet for all my suppressed psychotic frustration. we just absolutely crazy things we did in that campaign. And then there was Jarlsheim University. We were all students, going to the university in Jarlsheim, Jarlsheim Academy, and we were university students, and our enemies were a bunch of jocks. It was very Animal House. We had one student who was a warforged. Another of our students was a pseudo dragon. One was a Kender. Eee! And my character was a Warlock. I had a really weird backstory for this character. He wasn't, he didn't get his powers from the forces of darkness. He got them from the forces of chaos. And he was also a child prodigy with math. Can you say chaos theory? Who had been raised on wolves. Not by wolves, on wolves. He had been abandoned in the woods when his he had been abandoned in the woods. Nobody knows what happened to his parents. When a pack of wolves found him, and he killed and ate the alpha at the age of 5. We also had one guy. This is why I'm bringing this up. He was a paladin. He was a paladin student. He was a student paladin. And the thing of it is that he was an undead paladin. It seems that he had been killed in a training accident, and instead of bringing him to the proper healer to revive him, they brought him to somebody who raised him from the dead by mistake. And so it was kind of sad. He kept banishing himself. Turn undead, and then he'd have to run out of the room. The guy that played the Kender was okay. His character was cool. Of course, everybody in our fraternity, we lived in a frat house owned by a senile old wizard, and every campaign, every session we started out today. Time to shake the Kender. We'd pick up the Kender, shake him upside down to see what he had stolen that day. It was fun. I miss it. I wanted to be. I played a warlock character because it was the first character in the game system, in the Dungeons and Dragons game system, that I had found that didn't have to do the whole spell slot thing. I tried to play a wizard. I really did. I basically played a more cowardly version of Rincewind. Because among the spells he always slotted first. Every day he had expedient withdrawal. Two castings of expedient withdrawal. Or was it called expeditious retreat? Either way, the one that like quadruples your land speed. And he also had a pet donkey. He wouldn't cast the expedient withdrawal on himself if he didn't have to. He would cast it on the donkey, then he'd jump up on the donkey, take off across the countryside. Leave a trail of dust behind. Oh yeah, I know. I've heard that the more recent expansions, at the very least, you can cast your cantrips as many times as you want a day. That's nice. Every time I tried to play that character, though, something would happen, and the session would end, and the campaign would fall apart, and nobody would come back together again, no matter how often we checked. We could never get anybody back together. It was like the universe was conspiring to keep that character from being fleshed out. I would also try and play a paladin, and every time I wrote up a paladin character, right, the campaign would collapse. It always struck me as up until recently, it just always struck me as incredibly stupid that they would make these wizards. No wizard in his right mind would leave his master or his apprenticeship or leave his school or whatever until he had at least hit 5 or 6 levels. He had at least a handful of spells daily. But yeah, I remember if you start out at level 1, you get 1 spell, and I'm like, whoa, the peasants and the bandits and brigands shall tremble in fear of my presence. What were you supposed to do at a level 1? The guy looks at you, is that it? Yeah, that was it. That was it for the whole day. And you thought your girlfriend was disappointed. But, yeah. Oh, man. I could spend an hour or two just talking about the guys that have been here. You've been here before. You probably heard me tell several stories about Joyous Roguery, Honest McGillicuddy, and the rest of the gang that was there. I think that I played McGillicuddy the way I did because I got anger issues, I suppose. I started stealing a lot of stuff in ideas from. At one point, he got turned into a talking raccoon, and I said, "You've been reading my comic strip," and I ran with it. And he ended up permanently turned into a talking raccoon. He also ended up with the thing of it is Joyous Rogue. You couldn't find actual treasure anywhere. If you robbed the nobility, it was for practice. We once looted the entire Jarlsheim Museum and only came away with fake plaster replicas of skulls and bones. And the contents of the till from the gift store. it was tragic, but he loved the dungeon master loved sticking the screws to us whenever we tried to get clever. But at the same time, he'd have the town was had a gnomish quarter. We could go down to the Tinker Gnomes in the gnomish quarter and get just about anything built. One of our players had he was joking. He got stuck with it. He got a flaming glaive with sprinkles. He could use it to. It was apparently supposed to be a spell from a pastry knife. He could cut a cake and it would get sprinkles on the cake. Well, among other things, my Gnomish Rogue ended up. By the time we were done, he had 2 followers. One was a marksman, a young teenage marksman, and he had the teenage marksman. He had a blunderbuss, and he also had 2 pistols, flintlock pistols. The flintlock pistols were enchanted with both fire and lightning. So every time he fired it, the fa-doom, and I forget what the pistol, the rifle was enchanted with, but couldn't figure it out. He played for all he was worth. You know, I played him for all I was worth, but he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn. I would roll and he would miss by a mile. And I ended up having McGillicuddy buy him uh, a couple of lens of. Basically made a pair of spectacles for the guy out of two Eye of the Eagle gems. It cranked up your accuracy by plus a ridiculous amount. Then I found out that the reason he was missing all the time is because I had done the math wrong in adding up his stats, and so the dungeon master corrected him. And when he was done, I had a marksman who could pick the fleas off a dog's back at a mile's distance, blindfolded. And his other sidekick was another thief like himself, except she was a drow, a teenage drow girl. A teenage drow valley girl with valley speak. I mean, like, for totally sure, I like left the under I left like the underrealm because like spiders are so icky, and I used to drive the other players crazy with the way she talked. He accumulated all sorts of gear too. He managed to build a zeppelin half out of magical artifacts and half out of materials off the standard stuff you can buy list in the player's handbook. We do bombing runs on the rich nobility's lawn parties. Drop bags of cat litter on them. He also had a gauntlet with he had a ring. He called it a ring of gourmand. It had one of the players that started getting, one of the irregular players that started getting snarky and talking about how he was going to poison McGillicuddy because he got mad at me or at my character, one of the two. And so the dungeon master arranged it so that McGillicuddy ended up with a magic ring that not only could detect poison, but it also had the basic cantrips. This was back when wizards could only cast them one at a time. Could only cast one whatever cantrips they had prepared, and he gave him a ring that let him cast any cantrip he wanted at will, all day long, and abused the heck out of that thing. And he also ended up with a gauntlet of shrink item, which he wore on the other hand. At one time, I came up with all sorts of terrifyingly creative uses for that thing. At one, I managed to. We had guns and gunpowder, so I managed to develop a grenade. What he'd do is he'd take a barrel of gunpowder, shrink it down to about the size of a lemon. Then he'd tie a vial of alchemist fire to it. Then he could either set it down and remove the enchantment, or he could just throw it. The spell would break, the barrel would enlarge, the vial would break, boom. We calculated exactly what damage a barrel of gunpowder would do. A lot of buildings got leveled that way until the DM finally said no, and had he'd had enough of me. I would derail everything. I'd throw one of those grenades and just mess everything up. And so he cast he had somebody cast a curse on McGillicuddy that his grenades would never work for him again. Oh my. That's sort of one of the things that's missing from World of Warcraft. It's not a role-playing game. It's just not. It's more of it's more of a amusement park ride through a simulation of a role-playing game. The outcome is predictable. You know, the outcome is preset. The path you will take, well, no matter what, how varied it is, no matter which set of rails you take, you're still on rails. The end of each expansion is already set. That's the point of those cinematics they put into them. I think it doesn't lie within people's programming capability to create a real open world role-playing game. Not without, they would have to hire hundreds of people just to act as dungeon masters to mediate in decisions and arguments, and they'd have to be constantly changing the terrain and landscape of the game, and so on and so forth. Nothing a straight-up computer could do. No. No. Now, fantasy combat farmer, yeah. Well, you're not even allowed to farm. The problem is that each expansion has a goal, a mission, a grand quest that everybody gets funneled into. In the Wrath of the Lich King, you were eventually going to be at the battle where you face the Lich King. In Cataclysm, you were eventually going to face Deathwing. In Warlords of Draenor, I'm not sure how that one was supposed to close out. People tend to level past as fast as they can these days. In Legion, you eventually battled your way to the defeat of Malfurion in front of the pantheon of the Titans. I actually got through with that in one of my characters. Got all the way to the final game. The final cinematic where Malfurion got yanked off the planet, dragged back to the Pantheon, shrunk down to size, and there's Illidan Stormrage with his demon blades and a big old grin on his face. He said, "At last." And then cue screen fade out. And this one, really, it's supposed to be Battle for Azeroth. They present it as this big battle, this big conflict between the Horde and the Alliance. Really, they're just. But once you get into it, you find out, hey, guess what? The old gods are back again. It's Cthulhu. Cthulhu in the background. Yeah. Get out of here with your Lovecraft crap. An open-ended sandbox game would let people do their own role-playing and set their own course, decide on their own objectives as much as possible. But the way they do it now, there's a beginning and an end to every expansion. And you either go through it all the way or you skip levels and move on to the next expansion, and you feel like you've done yourself out of something. No, no, no. I won't say it. That I won't say that MMORPGers will never be as flexible as tabletop gaming. Technically, they never will. But I think they could do a lot better following examples that are already being laid out in the gaming industry that nobody's really paying attention to. People tend to prefer sandbox games. They prefer the parts of the game where they have the most ability to control their environment and their own choices and their own decisions and the outcome thereof. This is why people spend more time playing around with the settings on like Grand Theft Auto and having the characters do crazy chase scenes and stunts and things like that than they did on actually playing through the content of the game. This is one of the mistakes. I mean, they got these missions that you can do in Battle for Azeroth. They call war fronts. They've got two different examples of where the Alliance and the Horde clash, and one is an example of how to do it very well, and one is an example of how to do it very wrong. Uh, they have this thing. They're invasions basically, where at random times, in random locations, the Horde or the Alliance will invade the other's territory. It's not actually the Horde players doing it; it's the game. It's all NPCs. But if there's a Horde invasion going on, the Alliance players that happen to be in that area have to fight off the invasion. And it's up in the game world. It's not down in a dungeon or in a raid or anyway. It's actually part of the environment the game is set in. So there's much more real feel to it. Or you can you can either fight off the invasion, or you can, if you're of the other faction, you can participate in it. And they have a couple of short mission chains that run through that that can bring you to a conclusion, one way or the other. And that's a good example of how to do it, because it makes the whole Alliance and Horde conflict feel more real. Because it encourages everybody to get up off the guns and work together to on a common battle in the actual game world, rather than in some pocket dungeon or hidden castle someplace. An example of where it's done poorly is the war fronts. The war front, eventually, you take a portal and you run through this invasion thing where you try and build up your resources for your faction. Uh, the thing of it is that the enemy is not the other faction. It's entirely robot. It's all entirely NPC again. But there are no, if you're an alliance doing one of these war fronts, there's no horde players you face. It's all NPCs, and the outcome is already decided. Eventually, your faction wins and conquers the other side's fortress. It's preset that's what's going to happen. It's just a question of how fast your team gathers resources and kills off enemy NPCs as to how soon it's done. And it's greatly diminished the enjoyment when I realize you're participating in a mission. You just can't lose. There's no challenge to it. You could bumble through it backwards and cross-eyed, and still eventually your faction would win. You'd die a lot more frequently, but you'd still eventually be on the winning side. There's no way to lose. Even in a dungeon, it's possible for you to lose. So long as, well, not really. So long as that's another thing with World of Warcraft, the dungeon runs and so long as you get enough players to keep resurrecting themselves, coming back and starting from the beginning, start all over again, trying again. As long as you're willing to keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying again, you'll eventually get through the dungeon. There's no failure setting. The way you fail is when people are going, I haven't got time for this, and they log out. Those things you got, it's great for moving the characters and the players in the campaign forward. Not so great for player confidence, I don't think. The MMORPGs have the soap opera effect. What do you mean by the soap opera effect? They're not allowed to actually resolve. Well, you get a sort of a happy ending at the end of each expansion. The evil Legion gets defeated. The cataclysm that's shaking and threatening the world gets solved, or what have you. Well, let's be fair. These are games, they don't end. Life doesn't end. You don't wake up one morning and you see, and they lived happily ever after, and the back cover slams on your face. Things got to keep going on. World War II came to an end, but life still went on. No, that's one of the things. The reason I say they should have more than two factions. Even the Cold War eventually ended. It is called World of Warcraft. You don't exactly join up to join the Peace Corps. you'd think eventually that they would get some of their crap together. You know, that one side or the other would eventually fold up its cards and leave the table. You know, or that they would reach a point of neutrality, or something. I know what you mean. But to do that, they have to make. You know, they have to. They made a mistake of making. You know, as far as that goes, when you make a dichotomy, when you make a two faction game, you know you're already setting yourself up with a good evil dichotomy. You know that. Yeah, they have to be set up for a different way of doing things. They have to be set up so that one faction losing doesn't end end everything. Which again comes to my point about the multiple faction idea. Of course, are they ever going to listen to me? No, they're not going to listen to me. They're demonstrating they're not willing to listen to their own. You know, they're not willing to listen to anybody except their stockholders, and even then, only on peripheral. You have multiple factions, each with a different moral code, ethical code. You can change things up with each expansion without it feeling too clunky. You know, you can have like factions 1 and 3 teamed up against 2 and 4 with 5 abstaining, and then the next thing, the next expansion, you can change it all around. Have 1, 2, 3 versus 4, 5, 6. You know, or you can change, and the next expansion after that, you do it entirely different. The problem is, no matter how you do it, people are going to want a decisive conclusion at the end of the game, or at the end of the expansion. And well, there you go. Oh yeah, their stock is sinking. They are having troubles because, like I was talking about earlier, Activision jumped on board. Half swallowed them up, and now they're making decisions based on whatever looks really groovy in the market, rather than on what they are capable of doing, what they are experienced at doing. This is like taking over a muscle car factory and telling them that you want them to make solar-powered Yugos. Not their field of expertise. What they're doing, they get, quite bluntly, cell phone style games like Candy Crush and Farmville and all those others are making a killing. They are making at least 2 or 3 times what the online role-playing game, and the regular gaming industry makes. What they are forgetting is that they are not in the cell phone game industry. They are in the gaming industry. They are not in this. They are not in the Candy Crush game style industry. They are in the World of Warcraft industry. They are in the Morpurger industry. They are in the big online desktop computer. I built this system just so I could play World of Warcraft at maximum graphics system. That industry. They're in that business, and all the people trying to sneak up on it are just not getting it. These people that they are trying to break into the the phone game industry, because it's making billions more than their industry is. The problem is they don't know any more about making successful, marketable online phone games than a scuba diver knows about making bicycles. And just like when Coke started trying to make its own version of Pepsi, or when when the Disney Corporation decided they were going to stop making animated features, classically animated features, and start making CGI direct-to-video, and then they figured, oh, we got all these amusement parks and everything else, and they forgot their origins. They forgot that their origins. They forgot that was what it was, the mouse that that built Disney World. It wasn't the other way around. And these the Oaks folks. Yeah. Well, I'll be seeing you later, Wildwire. Wire, wire. Wire, 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 wire. See you on tomorrow. And it's time for me to go too. It is 12:40. Well, it's 12:38 here. Been here on 2.5 hours. Only did a little sketching. Didn't do it very much, but did a lot of yammering. Let's see if I can do more art and less talking next time, or maybe more of both. Wouldn't that be if I was walking, I'd fall on my face. Okay, but we'll see you all tomorrow. Try for early afternoon time instead of late at oh crap, what time is it? O'clock. Thank you all for tuning in. As always, if you're interested in placing a commission, if you want to, okay, first of all, check out my website, check out my www.rhjunior.com, or you can go to, I also have a couple other websites floating around there. There are links on the front page at RHJunior. I believe I've got a Deviant art page, and a couple other pages of my artwork and comic strips and so on and so forth that you can check out there. But my main page is www.rhjunior.com, and if you excuse me, and if you'd like to make a commission or place an order, that's the place to go to too. But if you'd like to be a patron of my website, help keep the artist fed and watered and off the streets. Keep it away from those juvenile delinquents selling drugs and things. You can go to patreon.com/RHJunior. Patreon.com, www.patreon.com/RHJunior. patreon.com/RHJunior. And ta-da! That's my Patreon site. If you become a patron, you get at the $5 donation level, you get just $5 a month. You get access to the extra artwork and also a free desktop each month. I'm catching up on those. Still got a couple months more to go. Each month to go with your subscription, and that pretty much sums it up. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you very much for watching. And you all take good care of yourselves, all right? God bless you.